and that would be just to talk about your campaign, and then have your personal page. I guess
I know what you're saying. I threw everyone with the word official. I didn't mean official. I just meant standardized.
Well, why don't we go by the gab rules on that one?
What are they?
I don't know, but why don't we just go for the official
What are we talking
rules?
about?
What's the gap rule?
Oh,
go
accountability
They don't
board.
have any on this.
All right.
Can I go back to number 2? I had questions there on that too. So, I mean, are we, I mean, I think we could decide as a body that we're not going to comment, like we'll make on our official,
There you go, on our trustee,
on our
official
trustee
page.
pages, or even on not trustee pages if we're posting about something. Like, I've been trying to get information out about the transportation and part of the plan, just the information in the plan so people know about it. I'm not posting my feelings about it, but are we, I mean, we could decide, look, we're just, to avoid the whole issue, we're not gonna comment on each other's posts at all. Or are we gonna, or we could just make an agreement to do that. I don't think we can legally say that because we have a First Amendment right to comment what we want. But I mean, but
What about
in terms of, and obviously walking forum, so if it's something we know is coming up, we can't post our opinions about it and then have discussions on Facebook
right.
about it, okay, obviously. But there's lots of issues that we may not know are coming up. There's lots of issues, any issue that we talk about could potentially come before the board.
But we talk about those in person too. If it's not on the agenda or we don't know it's gonna be scheduled in the future, then that's too bad.
Right, that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
is how
What do we do
how
now?
narrow or how broad are we
Right.
drawing?
But isn't it the same, so I always go back to what is practiced now to abide by open meetings law, whether it's social media, whether it's talking in the street, or it's, if we don't know what's on an agenda, we talk about things all the time. I
But
mean,
4 of us don't get together and talk about it. I mean,
we could, as long as it was about dog walking in the park right now, I mean, we could talk about it now, that would not be illegal if all of us, if me, you, Jessica, and Ann went to the park, we could talk about that.
yeah, I mean, I'm just bringing up the
Yeah.
question for discussion, like,
I know what you're
I
saying.
mean,
it's
if we
hard
wanted to be
distinguish.
super careful about it, we would say, look, let's just not interact with each other online at all.
I
I
agree
mean,
on
we
pages,
have
I could do
meetings to
that.
interact with each other that are videotaped, so.
But until you get into groups, and I'm not saying it for me, I'm just saying maybe the next trustee or anyone, but when, you're right next to me, right? When you get into a group, I've seen it, where you're talking about, not about an issue or something, but you're talking about, let's just do it this way, their alarm went off, and down the street, and, we called the village, and it was only this, and you had already said, oh, where is it located? And I say, oh, and blah, 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 all I'm just saying is, it's village, we're talking that it's,
I know,
That's
that's what I'm
okay.
trying to draw, where do
Yeah.
we draw the line, that's the question I have.
Just one thing I've seen in the past on these volunteer officials or a planning commission member where they're gonna be considering a decision or some administrator.
right.
And they comment so we do that too. I mean, things come before us. And if we start stating opinions before the applicant gets in here and, we have to be very careful.
we do warn our, is it maybe in training, Sarah, we can do a little bit more?
Well, we should put it in the policy.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you're
that's-
recommending
It's in
Some language on,
Upcoming agenda items?
well,
there's
items
a
that are
specific
gonna.
word for it.
Yeah, it's in
Uh,
the,
I know what you're referring to though.
It's in the manual.
Like, is it even like I'm trying to think, is it the design review board, or what's there's a governing body?
Quasi-judicial?
Yeah, that would be,
Quasi-judicial matters coming before.
I think that's it.
But as
The
an
board.
elected official, just so we don't broaden this too much, as long as you don't say this is how I'm gonna vote, okay? You can talk about policy.
Well, if some applicant's coming in and they haven't had a chance to state their case,
Yeah.
there's two people, and it's like a judge going out before
I
a decision. You can't,
You can't by law?
you can't, no,
Oh.
you can't.
But as long as you don't.
And even if it's not,
It's
like,
bad
by
practice
law,
to do
it's
it
just
anyway.
not kind or, you know what I mean, it just doesn't.
People sometimes ask your opinion on scooter legislation.
You don't have to say it to the whole
Yeah,
world.
that's a good one, like
Well,
scooters are
you
gonna
know,
come up
consider
in front of
it's
us.
consider relations.
I think that the transportation one was actually like a really good example, because what also does happen with the algorithms is that I would imagine that this happens to a lot of people, that maybe they are not interacting with the village's page as often. And so, or there's not maybe as many comments, so that does not come up in people's feed as often. So, you know, letting community members know about, you know, an upcoming transportation, meeting, discussion, you know, from multiple places would potentially bring in more residents and bring
Yes.
in more
Yeah,
interaction.
and right now this
And so,
prohibits that.
right, so I mean, I hate for us to get so broad that we lose some of that ability to have that dialogue and that conversation, because, you know, what if somebody saw it on your page but didn't see it on the village's page and ended up coming to the conversation and, you know, we got something out of it.
That's not, oh, sorry.
No, I know, I just,
No, I'm interested.
no, I just wanna make sure
It
that
does,
as
I
we're
don't think it's that right
discussing,
now from committee
you know,
member person to
that-
personal page.
that we just don't get to that point where there's, you know, so.
Well, this does get to that point, I guess.
Well, I would love, I mean, we brought it up a few times, so that I would love some feedback on. You know, if that's an issue for majority of the board, we could phrase that as something, you know, we wanna avoid a walking quorum. And you know, the way that we would avoid a walking quorum is assuring that not more than, would be in your case, 3 or more, cause you have to also be,
Some
Any other
committees.
committee,
yeah.
there's all these committees.
Yeah, so, I mean, maybe we just use the word walking, but I think what I would propose is I can work with Nathan on developing some recommended language that
I don't-
basically just says that we would avoid, like a walking quorum on comments. I think the only reason why I
Comments of
mentioned
what?
none was because I think for anyone that reads that's clear. I think if we utilize that more legal definition, I think that's a little bit harder for people to interpret.
And walking quorum, if you're gonna do that, can you please define on what topics? Because again, you can, 3 people, a walking quorum isn't a walking quorum unless it's coming on an upcoming agenda. Like you can have 3 people talking, and you're gonna consider it a walking quorum, but it might not be.
So I have an issue with this because there's also, by avoiding the, what, if I have this correct, you're saying that there can be comments, but only up to a certain amount, or by a certain number of trustees?
That's a number of options
Because,
until you
and the
hit the
problem I would
quorum.
have with that is because until you get quorum, then you can only have opinions of 3 trustees, and that looks like it's an official decision or decree, but it's like whoever the
Yeah.
first 3 to get there, or I'm not in some of these Facebook
Right,
groups that
I
you
agree.
guys are, and then
If
all of
it's
a
on an
sudden,
upcoming
you all
agenda, item, you
wanna,
shouldn't be talking to each other.
well, right, I mean,
But sharing
Clearly.
information is clearly, I think,
Yeah.
encouraged in the introduction, so like, I think that that posting things about upcoming meetings and plans and things like that, you know, and I think we just have to be honest with ourselves that we're not, you know, cutting and pasting reports so that they look different. I'm not saying anybody has, but you know, that's where it's like somebody could manipulate it, but it's like,
Mhm.
again, if we're getting to that point where we have to regulate each other and monitor each other to that level of detail, then we've got a huge problem past the policy.
Well, I don't, yeah, and I mean, with the regulation of all of this is
Impossible.
impossible, but I mean, I was thinking more like, if we could come to some understanding of terms amongst ourselves as to, you know, like, for example, we won't get into back and forth discussions with each other on social media, you know, we'll save that for the meetings, but,
Mhm.
and I mean, I've been trying to just keep my posts like factual, you
Mhm.
know.
Which I think is incredibly helpful.
It does say in here that committee members should not post any official village stuff, shouldn't post on their personal pages, I can't remember where, but there's a sentence that says that, and then it goes along with, well, can they forward information?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Just
they
make
would
it
be
clear.
as well too. Because some of our volunteer, we have 1 or 2 volunteer committees right now that have a page, so those would go away. If they would have a post, we would ask them to contact myself, who runs the Village of Shorewood page, and I would share that on our general page. And that's just a little bit easier to manage.
But they can post that same once it's shared on their own.
On their own
Okay.
personal page,
Okay.
correct.
If you reread, there's a sentence in here that prohibits that. I have a question about the disclaimer.
Can,
Oh, go ahead.
I wanna make sure that we're clear, cause I don't think that's the case, so I wanna make sure that we identify that sentence that.
If we go
I
through
haven't
all- we're trying to
interpreted.
do-
These examples that have been brought up around, like, I think it's saying this, I haven't interpreted them that way. In general, I find the policy very easy to follow and comply with. So I think it's good to make sure that we're clear on it.
Just repeat that.
I mean, I think what, I'm not sure, did we move on
Yeah,
to some,
we're
because I
talking
think for the
about
volunteer
social
committees,
No, that's not it.
I mean, that's gonna be very different, like the bid, for example, I mean, there's bid members who
Yes, this is commerce.
jump into,
Yeah, includes the
when we
bid,
have
jump into
conversations
that.
about issues around, along the business district, I mean, there's several bid members who will comment and make comments about it, I mean, I think the planning commission is pretty understanding that they shouldn't be commenting on things.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do know.
Um, but,
So in your opinion, does
Conservation
that
maybe,
need
I
to-
don't know.
Do you think that needs to change then?
Yeah,
in
it
your
does, because
opinion?
they're,
Well, listed.
I mean,
They are
I
gonna-
think for someone, I mean, it's one thing to be an elected official and you're subject to open records and all that kind of stuff and, you know, but someone who's serving on a committee, you know, I'm not sure they're even aware a lot of the times about, open meetings and things like that and just, I mean, some of them are, you know, they just, like, they're on social media, they're in a group and they just get into a conversation, they're not, you know, is it, can we really expect someone on, you know, the public art committee to be always thinking of their public art role and their, you know, whenever they're saying something, I don't know.
I agree in a practical sense, completely agree, but from a policy, what do we want the policy to still say in that regards? Cause, you know, we still wanna be careful that we aren't getting into,
Well, when you say talk village business, I mean village business pertaining to their role on a committee.
yeah,
You know, I mean,
okay,
they should be able to talk about, you know, the latest taco
Recycling.
store, recycling, or snow removal, you know,
I see what you're saying.
yeah.
I'll
Thank
find
you.
it later and send it to you, Tyler, but I do have a question, we're done with
Okay.
that.
Trustee Warren, did you have a question?
I had one and then I forgot what I was gonna ask. The first page, section B, the way the last two sentences are worded in that section, it does sound like we don't want people reposting village content.
Thank you, so it's so fair.
Okay,
Oh, is that what you
that's not the intent, so if that's,
Yeah, but
if we
Okay,
have,
he's-
well, we have several people saying that, you know, I wanna make sure it's clear, so,
Maybe just reword it a little bit.
It is encouraged for
Yeah,
other
somewhat.
non-village social media pages to share village content.
But then, the problem is that they don't have permission to use village or branding or logo.
right,
So
yeah,
I'd soften it a
that
little
was-
bit,
right.
may not have permission, might do the trick.
Well,
Just-
we had a big discussion before you got here
linking.
about whether our,
For rails.
like, do you have a village of trustee, village of Shorewood page? No.
I don't,
Do you have just your own page?
it's just my personal.
You just have a personal page. So Allison was just saying we should use the Shorewood thing if we had on her president page, which is different from her personal.
Yeah, which we, yeah.
But we were kind of undecided.
I was
And
actually
then-
confused about that with you know, if you share something about a pen and bike meeting that has, you know, the official logo from the Shorewood page. So then you're sharing that logo, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like-
interpret it as if it could be construed, not that it could be unintentional, but if it could be construed that the use of the logo on your page could be construed as I'm officially representing
The whole board.
the whole board,
Mhm.
right? And that would just be a way of avoiding it. Maybe there's another way to say it,
Mhm.
and maybe that's not what everybody else's interpretation was, but.
if,
This last line on section B, it says off our page, is that implying a link to our page, to our actual content, or you're pasting it out, or, I mean, linking is good, or posting a link to.
Share,
Then
I think that sentence implies sharing things from
Sharing
the village
off.
page.
Yeah, no,
which section
Could
are
be
you
This
copy
in?
B,
paste.
the last
Yeah, okay.
sentence, off is kind of.
Yeah,
From
I think I'm-
pages,
Share.
Yeah.
content.
okay, I can, well, in the previous sentence where it's talking about the branding or logo, I'll add a little phrase that says unless sharing a post directly from an official village page.
Yeah. that's
Okay, I
true.
think that will
Yeah,
help
verify
some of the
Yeah.
concerns.
Yep.
yeah, that'll do it.
I was
And
also,
then I will try to wordsmith off, so it's a little more clear. Is that the
Yeah,
word that
yeah,
you're?
yeah.
I was wondering, Tyler, if you had given thought to the website versus the Facebook or, I don't know, Twitter, Instagram, whatever else the village has, because, I mean, I think I try to encourage people to go to the village website. So like I'll put the link on the, you know, here's, so, and, I don't know, have you given thought to that, about, like, are we trying to push traffic to the website?
Website, for sure.
I think we should be.
Anytime I make a social media post, it's always as a way of pushing it to the website.
Yeah,
So that, I 100% agree. So if you wanna add any language that's encouraging when we're talking about the use, that it's as a vehicle to push people to the website, we could add a sentence that states that. Is that what your point is?
Well, no,
Or-
I mean, yeah, if that's what you're trying to do, I mean, I think, cause the website is really, you know, where the actual document is, where the actual minutes are, where the actual, so, yeah, I mean, I think that's a better way to try to encourage people to go to the website.
When we were just talking about not quoting names of individuals or like positions like the village manager without getting permission to say that. So let me just give an example and see if this would be permitted or not. The whole safety thing that went on at the school, and the chief went up on stage and said he had a copy of the plan, okay? If I posted tonight, you know, the chief, in a positive light, the chief wanted to let people know that the chief has a copy so you could feel better. Now you said the chief, so I just wanted to make sure, what do you mean by that? Like, especially for elected officials.
Where
So
is-
yeah, so if you go to personal use guidelines in section F,
Cause I mean, I certainly could call.
it's on actually the fourth page or page 16. The second bullet point says, do not reference or cite village employees without their express consent.
And I didn't say his name, but that's kind of saying him.
Or reference, yeah. I think these are great guidelines, that we don't really have to push this information out there. It's available on the village website, it's available on the village Facebook. So if we have any questions, like, we don't need to do that. We don't need to tell the world to make him feel better that he has this.